Kwarteng and Truss, credibility and trust. Credibility and trust, Kwarteng and Truss. I don't know where I'm going with this. It just occurred to me moments before the light came on that there were similarities between those four words, or at least between the two groups of two. Kwarteng and credibility, Truss and trust. Duh. It's a nebulous, intangible thing, credibility, you know. It is not necessary. I don't think it follows a logical path. There was a great piece in the Sunday Times yesterday by Ed Conway, the Sky economics editor, that it's not something that is subject to scientific rules. It's not like gravity. What goes up does not necessarily have to come down, and what goes down will not necessarily come up again. There's no algorithm, there's no calculation, there's no mathematical formula for deciding what credibility is, or rather where credibility goes. And they've lost it. Probably forever. Whether or not they lost it before or after this U-turn is a question for the ages. My money is on before. In fact, all my money is on before. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that this morning's announcement hits me personally in the pocket to the tune of several £1,000s, which I am, for the record, celebrating. That's what patriotism is, by the way. It's not about hating foreigners. It's about honestly believing that if you're lucky enough to be in the highest echelon of taxpayers, I'm nowhere near the highest echelon of earners, then you should indeed be helping out people who aren't. But even though I've taken a hit to the tune of several £1,000s myself this morning, I think that's the money I would have bet on this if there were odds available. I think it was already over. I don't think this is going to make the blindest bit of difference. I think it might have made things worse. Kwarteng and Truss, credibility and trust, are now strangers. In fact, even when retreating, even when undertaking the most humiliating U-turn since the last humiliating U-turn, it doesn't sound credible. We're doing it because everyone's talking about it, and it's a distraction from all the good stuff that we did. It wasn't exclusively the tax cut for the highest earners in British society that spooked the markets, that saw the pound plummet, and crucially saw the predictions of where interest rates will be go through the roof. They've come down a bit this morning. I'll keep an eye on it for you, because I think that is probably the most important thing for many people listening. If you are having to renew your mortgage, I heard from an old friend this weekend who was in pieces. He's in the worst possible situation where his mortgage is up for renewal this month, and he's being told it's going to be £400 a month more than it was for the last 5 years, and he hasn't got the money. He doesn't know what he is going to do. He was in a state of despair. And that's the point. So at the moment, you're looking at 5.5 to 5.75 being the prediction of where interest rates will be next year. It was 6 before this U-turn. The pound will stabilise a little bit, hopefully a little bit more than it has already after the Bank of England intervened in an unprecedented fashion, after the IMF issued a warning in an unprecedented fashion. I always take a moment on mornings like this to throw a small bone to the terminally stupid, the people claiming that because the pound had steadied meant that criticism of the mini-budget had somehow been refuted or undermined. The polar opposite is true. The fact that the pound did stabilise, possibly temporarily, possibly briefly, but hopefully not, is entirely due to the Bank of England's intervention. And the Bank of England's intervention was entirely due to its conclusion that the government's policy, that Kwasi Kwarteng's budget, was absolutely disastrous. So it was not a reflection on anything contained within the budget that the pound stabilised late last week. It was a reflection on the intervention of the Bank of England, which they continue to not really talk about in the depth that is needed. Kwarteng and Truss, credibility and trust. Trust and credibility, Kwarteng and Truss. It's gone. And here's the question. Have they made it worse? 0345 6060 973.